evening. Welcome to Public Forum. I'm Shalini Verma. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be attending the World Economic Forum in Davos this year, which begins on January 23rd. This is his maiden visit to the World Economic Forum's annual meeting and carries great significance in terms of business opportunities. This is the first time in 2 decades that an Indian Prime Minister will be at the annual World Economic Forum meeting, the last one having been former Prime Minister H.D. Devegowda. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be leading a huge delegation of business leaders and ministers. It is seen as a big opportunity for India to showcase itself as one of the key engines of global economic growth. The 5-day World Economic Forum annual meeting will host government heads, global organizations and nearly 2,000 CEOs from top companies of the world. Around 400 sessions will be held during this period. And India currently is a $2.3 trillion economy and is poised to be the fastest growing in 2018, with expected growth of 7.3% ahead of China, according to the World Bank's Global Economic Prospects report released earlier this month. Prime Minister Modi will be representing in India despite the drop in its growth rate, which is still regarded as a global growth hotspot and a preferred investment destination. So how crucial is the Davos meeting for India? What are the common challenges and concerns for the world economies and the way forward? We discuss it all in Public Forum today, and joining me in the program is Dr. Sachin Chaturvedi. He's Director General, Research and Information Systems for Developing Countries, the RIS, and Mr. Mukul Sanwal, who's a former UN diplomat, also joins me on the panel. Welcome to the program. Well, Dr. Chaturvedi, let us first try and understand how significant is this meet, since the Prime Minister himself would be representing India, and he has said that it's going to be a great opportunity for India indeed.
I think, Shalini, it's one of the key events of this year for the Prime Minister's agenda, particularly at a point when Indian economy has bounced back. The narrative that he and his administration came up with was clearly being questioned after GST and demonetization. Prime Minister's own presence at the global platform would unleash the great energy that this government brings on the table. I think number two, which is adding to this, is greater commitment that our Trade Minister, Mr. Suresh Prabhu, emphasized in terms of importance of multilateralism within the broad global architecture. At a time when the 45th President of the United States is pressing for America first, and rest of the Europe is keen to listen about that importance of multilateralism, it is important that the Prime Minister is bringing in both the unique growth narrative of India with his structural and key reforms, the important emphasis on multilateralism, the fact that India would be hosting WTO mini-ministerial in days to come, and back home here, preparations for India-ASEAN Connect, yes, giving impetus to our RCEP negotiations. Everything is so well timed in terms of presence of Prime Minister on this important platform. It is absolutely fascinating. I think the timing part is very, very interesting to look at. And indeed, India is using this opportunity. There's also this point of soft power, Mr. Sanwal, which has been talked about. Yoga, for instance, being one of the key highlights of the World Economic Forum meeting this time.
But you see, Shalini, this is a time when India has, in the recent past, asserted itself in a way that India had not done for a long time to come. I would say centuries earlier. You know, we stayed away from the inaugural session of China's effort to rewrite the global order in terms of the OBOR, or the Bridge and Road Initiative. India opposed the United States in the WTO on facilities to developing countries. So, in a sense, this open clash with the major economies or major political powers had left people wondering which direction India is going to take. So, in addition to the economic aspect, where India is looking for FDI destinations, talking about inflation under control and an economy moving forward, ease of business doing better than earlier, I think Prime Minister has also made a very important statement the other day, saying that he wants to tell the world what will be the terms of engagement that India would adhere to or would espouse in terms of the world community, and how India would react to the problems of global governance and systemic issues that are really questioning the existing and the new order that China is wanting to lay out. See, this also comes at a time when in the Western countries who had designed this liberal order and the set of rules, there is a questioning of the political economic system itself.
Yeah.
And China is coming forward with another model of development. And at the same time, we find that countries in Asia in particular are questioning both models. They are not comfortable with President Trump withdrawing from the trade partnership that was under negotiation, which basically means withdrawing from multilateralism. They are also not very comfortable with China's concept of the OBOR, or Bridge and Road Initiative, because there are questions around the terms of that of the assistance that is being given. Okay. They want the foreign investment for infrastructure development, but it's a very high cost. So
when the World Economic Forum's theme this year talks of creating a shared future in a fractured world, how significant is that theme? What is the message?
No, you are absolutely right. This is the fracture that the world is. This is the fracture. The old order is being questioned, not just by the Chinese and the Indians and the other countries, but by the proponents of that order itself. Here you have President Trump questioning the very order the United States established. You have countries in Asia questioning the OBOR after welcoming it initially. And both of them, or rather all of them, including the ASEAN countries who are going to be here very soon, all 10 of them, are seeing India as a beacon of stability in this kind of fractured world that you had called about. And I just want to take it back just for a into our ancient history of civilization. Throughout civilization, India was the richest country. Till 1757, the Battle of Plassey, we were richer than China.
Yeah.
We clothed the world. Our textiles formed 2/3 of British trade.
Yeah.
And our ideas spread to Asia, including China. But we never sought to dominate any country in the world. We never used this strategic advantage for aggression. So historically, we have been a balancing factor, we have been a factor of stability, and the fact that these 10 ASEAN countries are coming here is an important indicator that they see us in that role.
Okay.
And here I think it's an important factor. My last point is that when Prime Minister came, he called the SAARC countries. He's now called the ASEAN countries.
Okay.
And they are responding. And now he's going to Davos and saying, I want to tell the world what will be my terms of engagement. He is now becoming a rule maker, I beg your pardon, just like China and the United States, not a rule taker. He is telling governments and the world that these are my terms of engagement.
That's a very important thing to look at, how the world is looking at India and how India is projecting itself. Do you see that really happening, particularly at the World Economic Forum and at every such occasion where we see India represented like this by the Prime Minister or the leaders here?
See, Shalini, I think before we get into that sort of role or take a call on analyzing it, I think we should take into cognizance the fact that after 2014 this government came in, Prime Minister unleashed a major reforms program which has brought in the great transformative forces together in a consolidated manner. And this has provided the bedrock for economic, social, political reforms all across. And this, I think, is absolutely important for a transformative India to reflect the growing aspirations all across sections of the society. So greater consolidation of economic policy making in this country and bringing that as part of the external sector policy making. So trying to leverage our external sector connect for domestic economic growth is where the bottom line is. And then trying to see culture, commerce and connectivity reinforcing some of these elements. So you see things are falling in a pattern where startup or make in India are, which people at some stage described as slogans, are no more slogans. They have become reality. You are seeing economy bouncing back after a lot of apprehensions of GST and demonetization. You are seeing sectors like electronics, semiconductor industry bouncing back. You're seeing the Mudra Bank giving 25% of its loan to women from Chhattisgarh, Andhra Pradesh and West Bengal. And half of them are first-time account openers. So financial inclusion, going with the biometric Aadhaar-enabled e-payment services, you are seeing that happening and having some sort of impact. The fact that this domestic transformation is also contributing to global economy. It's also transforming the stagnating global trades and services regime. So here is a great opportunity for the global markets to invest in India.
Okay.
And if you see this pattern, it is evident through the foreign direct investment figures.
That's right.
If you see India's outbound foreign direct investment from 11 to 13 was somewhere close to $79 billion, and incoming FDI was $33 billion. Now in 2017, it has just reversed. If you see the inbound foreign direct investment in this country, it also already stands at $76 billion, and our outbound foreign direct investment has now come down to $48 billion. So this growing confidence of investors in India, India's own ease of doing business, India's own opening up of the FDI sector, you find that when we are talking of some of these initiatives, whether after the bankruptcy regulations that we have evolved, the FDI policy, we have evolved the policies related to our easy transfers and intellectual property rights. We have addressed spectrum of policies,
and that leaves a lot of optimism, particularly.
Exactly. So this has given enough reasons for the Prime Minister to spell that out in a context which you rightly said is the theme. And if you see the background paper which the World Economic Forum has released before Prime Minister's address, they have identified 14 sectors.
Yeah.
And these 14 sectors are telling you the story that right now we are talking about in terms of the strength of our domestic reforms.
Okay.
And it is this energy which, as IMF and ADB both have predicted, our economic growth close to 7.3% or 6.9%. Be that what the figure may be, but important is that we are going to be the fastest growing economy of the world. And this tells the story.
Okay, we'll take a very short break now in Public Forum. Stay tuned for more on the other side of this break. Welcome back. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will meet the World Economic Forum's International Business Council, comprising close to 120 senior global leaders, which acts as an advisory body providing intellectual stewardship. The positive outlook on Indian economy will be one of the key highlights for India among the global economies, and that happens to be one of the key things here to watch out for the World Economic Forum meeting, which will be happening in Davos. Well, one important thing about the shared interest, now let's look at that, which the World Economic Forum clearly highlights, which is the international security, environment, global economy. Well, Mr. Sanbal, how do you look at the shared interest and the divisions that it says do exist within countries, something where they're in fact trying to find some sort of a convergence of the two in that theme?
See, the people who organize the Davos conference bring out a global risks report. Now, the global risk report just brought out in 2018 speaks about a number of threats in which cyber security, terrorism, climate change are important factors. Now, the world community is also realizing that India is one of the few countries, along with China, which are taking climate change very seriously in different ways. China's per capita emissions are twice those of ours. And even though our per capita emissions of carbon, for example, are less than the global average, India is taking huge steps towards the renewable energy market. So here they see a country which has changed. And climate change, I think, is a very good example because it's also part of the major risks that they have identified with a huge impact. that earlier we were taking shelter under the fact that we were poor or we had not contributed to the problem, and therefore we need to do not anything. Now we are taking the view that if it's good for us, and a lot of this is good for us, why don't we take the lead? And a very significant example is the initiative of the Prime Minister to go in for a global solar alliance. Here you are not only saying give me money, which had been our refrain right from independence till recently, that I will do anything you want basically if you give me money for it.
Yeah.
But now he's saying no, I have come to a stage where I can see the advantages of taking on these kind of global challenges, playing a role at the global stage to take care of, as you said, the shared responsibility or shared prosperity idea that the Davos people are talking about.
Shared future, that is right. Which
Future,
does reflect in that.
And I would like to take an initiative, an international initiative, where I want you to be a partner, so that we can do this together. So that is the best example one has of the shared future. If the future is going to be renewable energy and solar energy is going to be an important aspect, the Prime Minister has said, here is a way for us to share that future and have to go about it. Not in terms of responsibilities and environmental law or some treaty that had been negotiated in 1992, where the world was very different, but in terms of the situation that exists in the world today, going to exist in the future.
You know, one of the key things to look out for is that how important is this forum particularly to flag these very important issues, and the fact that there are these global challenges which are often talked about. One of them indeed is to see that there's deepening income inequality. There is also persistent jobless growth around economies. There are also issues of violence and conflicts, and then there is, of course, this environment sustainability issue which the countries are fighting against. How do you look at these common challenges?
Shalini, we would have to realize the fact that the multilateral fora where we echoed some of the global concerns are shrinking in their approach and also maneuvering space, because if you see WTO, where we expected a lot of things to be discussed and we heard only a sort of fragmented voice. This is one platform where heads of the state are going to exchange ideas across the spectrum. In G20, things are still in a more coherent manner, but they are for very few of the wider global spectrum. So it is important stage to articulate our global positioning. If in case of India, we talk about India's policy narrative. But this is also important for us to re-emphasize some of the global principles and the ability for the governments to retain globalization as an emphatic point of reference, to retain opening up of the market as an important point. Not huddle into protectionism is another important global reference point. The third is in terms of the importance of multilateralism.
Okay.
So the idea with which the whole opening up and liberalization process started in early 90s and our later transition from GATT, GATT to WTO, we have been contributing and part of a global architecture. Initially, we didn't see ourselves as one, but later on, as the advantages have come in, we resurrected economy, and in last 3-4 years the consolidation has happened. We have bounced back with emphatic political will. Things are on track for India. It is also absolutely important for India to bring in Africa and others.
Yes.
And Prime Minister Modi has been emphatic in terms of an inclusive message, and that message of Sabka Saath Sabka Vikas is not just for domestic constituency, it is for the wider global message.
And there's a lot of focus these days, especially on the international forum, that you see
exactly.
that world leaders, and women leaders are largely, promoted. So that I think is very important.
And that's where India's new approach on development cooperation, and though we talk about South-South cooperation and our emphatic role of that, but it also is the new emphasis on triangular cooperation, so bringing the developed world with you as we move forward.
Yes.
But at this point, it is also important for us to be reminded of Prime Minister's emphasis on role of global institutions. UN is definitely one of them. Centrality of global institutions and their role to play as we are creating the new development bank. India would be hosting the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank's meeting. That's the financial architecture. But the role of the UN, the role of the other global institutions, be that WHO and others, it is important for us to see that these architectures also have an interface as economies are growing, or some of them which are shrinking.
Okay.
So in that sphere, in that movement, meeting of WEF is important to signal out how inclusion is so important. We standing together against terrorism, against all efforts to derail peace plans across various regions, our growing partnership with Israel, our sort of positive signal to Palestine. These are messages where modern liberal approach to democracy and centrality of development as a pivot to all this process is the key message, and that's what we can hear from PM.
Okay, very interesting points there, but I would take concluding remarks from you, Mr. Sawant, on this.
Shalini, we have having these 10 heads of state of the ASEAN countries over, and the theme of that conclave or discussion is connectivity, commerce and culture. Now here you see the Prime Minister taking, who are the people who are going there to go Davos with him? That is the cultural aspect, the yoga teachers who are going to demonstrate India's strength. Now, throughout the world, it is being recognized that yoga has a medicinal impact. We had been saying that for a long time. Now, Western science, so-called Western science, is recognizing that as well. Then you have the commerce aspect, where you have.
I think that's a very important, thing.
Innovation. You have the UN Yoga Day, but then you have to.
Very important contribution that comes from India, especially.
And recognize the world over.
Absolutely.
Then you have the commerce people there, because here is a forum that is not only heads of state talking to each other, but the business talking to each other too, and heads of state talking with business. So you have the commerce discussion which he's going to have with people. And then connectivity, of course, is the new theme, because everybody needs infrastructure development. And that is something more you do at the head of state level, probably because it's a matter of policy. So you can see a consistency in the approach of the Prime Minister with the 10 states of the ASEAN, Davos. And if this idea of connectivity, commerce and culture can be extended to what he's going to say about the way India is going to engage with the world, and how India looks at global institutions and global governance, which will, I think, reinforce the point that is going to emerge from the Asia-ASEAN summit. And because India's role in the world is going to be based on India's role in Asia. If 50% of global GDP is going to be in Asia, and we are going to be the number 3rd economy or number 2nd economy in the near future, then we have to have a strong base. We have to have the people of Asia with us, the Asian market, the Asian countries, and then we project ourselves abroad, based again on our cultural strengths, not on military power. I think that is a very important message that I'm sure the Prime Minister will give. India has never conquered any other territory.
Fine. So the world will be watching the World Economic Forum, which begins from tomorrow, and interestingly, a lot of interesting things around India, which are going to happen this time at the Davos meet. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining me in this program. Well, that's all for today in Public Forum. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.